Have you ever had that quiet moment when everything shifts? When you realize you've healed and you're no longer the person who was waiting in pain? What does it feel like for a man when he sees you again, not broken or bitter, but glowing and at peace? It's more powerful than you might think. Today, we're going to uncover what really happens in a man's heart and mind when he realizes you've moved on, not out of bitterness, but from true healing. There's a quiet, powerful moment when he sees you again. Not broken, not bitter, but glowing, whole, and peaceful. And in that instant, something shifts. It's not just a change on the outside. He sees it, he feels it, you've moved on, and it's clear to him. Trust me, this moment does something to him. It's the moment when he realizes that you're no longer waiting, no longer hurting, and certainly no longer available to be hurt again. And here's the key. This isn't about bitterness or anger. It's not about revenge. It's about healing. It's not about hate. It's about wholeness. What he's seen is deeper than anything he might expect. It's transformation. When a man sees that you've truly moved on peacefully, without fanfare or drama, and without the need to announce it to the world, he's not just seeing a woman who's healed. He's witnessing the stark contrast between the life he thought you'd live without him and the one you're actually living. And for many men, especially those who once held psychological power in the relationship, this contrast becomes unbearable. You see, there's something fundamental about human nature that we often miss. We don't truly understand the value of stability, loyalty, and deep feminine energy until we're faced with the emptiness of their absence. When a man realizes that you're no longer emotionally tethered to him, when you've stopped looking back, stopped reaching out, and stopped hoping, it rattles something deep inside him. It feels personal, but it's not really about you. It's about the psychological structure he built and what your newfound peace is deconstructing. Think back to when he first walked away, or when he pushed you away. There may have been a sense of control, even superiority. Perhaps he left because he thought the grass was greener on the other side, or maybe he couldn't face his own inadequacies reflected in the intimacy you offered. Whatever the reason, his decision brought him temporary relief, a feeling of freedom, or so he thought. But here's the truth. That freedom was often based on an illusion, the illusion that you would remain emotionally available, that you would still be hurting but waiting, fractured but within reach. Your suffering in his mind provided a quiet reassurance. It told him that he still mattered, that he still had access to you, and that the door was never really closed. But when that door finally closes, quietly and with dignity, everything changes. There are no angry words, no bitter post-just peace. That calmness becomes deafening to him. And what makes it even harder for him, psychologically, is that your peace implies that his presence wasn't essential to your happiness. Not only are you okay, you're better, stronger, maybe even joyful. As we move forward, let's dive deeper into the psychological impact of your transformation and what it really means for the future of your relationship with him. Stay with me as we explore the profound changes that come with emotional freedom. As we saw in the previous section, when you move on with peace, healing, and self-love, it creates an undeniable shift. But the impact goes deeper. Let's explore the psychological unraveling a man faces when he realizes the strength of your transformation. For a man who derived part of his identity from being needed or desired, this shift becomes an existential wound. You see, men, particularly those with unexamined emotional immaturity, often tie their worth to being irreplaceable in a woman's life. And when you demonstrate that you can replace him with self-love, peace, purpose, community, or even silence, it doesn't just bruise his ego, it devastates it. You didn't have to scream. You didn't have to beg. You simply grew. You turned inward, healed the parts of yourself that he didn't even have the courage to face, and you transformed. Now, when he sees you in this light, your laugh brighter, your skin clearer, your energy centered, he can't help but be haunted by the realization that while he stayed the same, you evolved. And so, the psychological fallout begins. He starts to remember not just the physical connection, the conversations, but the very essence of your presence, the way you forgave, the way you saw him deeply despite his flaws. That kind of memory is dangerous for a man who never learned how to nurture or protect what was sacred. Now, you've become the symbol of what he couldn't hold on to. Ironically, you're at peace, while he wrestles with regret. But there's more at play here. Your peace doesn't just remind him of what he lost, it challenges his ego in the most primal way. You need to understand something fundamental. Men are raised, directly or indirectly, to see themselves as the center of a woman's emotional world. Not maliciously, but because society often reinforces the idea that male presence is pivotal, almost as if women orbit around their influence. So, when you remove yourself from that orbit, when you no longer seek validation from him, it disrupts that deeply ingrained belief. It's not just uncomfortable for him, it's destabilizing. He might tell himself that he doesn't care, that he's fine, but every time he hears your name spoken kindly, every time he stumbles upon a photo where you're glowing, every time mutual friends mention how well you're doing something, inside him tenses. Why? Because it contradicts the narrative he told himself. He told himself that you needed him more than he needed you, that you couldn't thrive without him. Maybe, just maybe, you'd always be lingering in the background of his life, an option, a backup plan. But you weren't a backup. You were the foundation. And now that the foundation has been rebuilt for you, by you, his sense of superiority dissolves into something far more uncomfortable insignificance. And here's the truth. He may never admit it, not to you, and not even to himself. Your peace offends him, not because it's wrong, but because it exposes him. When someone is still living in turmoil, they expect others to mirror that inner chaos. Misery thrives in shared dysfunction. But you've chosen peace. And this peaceful transformation is what really shakes him. Stay with me as we dive deeper into how your newfound strength continues to unravel his sense of control and forces him to confront the reality of what he truly lost. As we've explored, your peace and independence have created a powerful shift. You've chosen growth, solitude, and a sense of self-identity beyond the relationship. But what does this mean for him? Let's dive into how this transformation impacts his perception and how he begins to confront his own shortcomings. You chose something else. You chose growth, solitude, and a sense of identity beyond the relationship. And that makes him feel small, not because you shamed him, but because you no longer need him. That absence of need, it's not cold. It's clarifying. It says, I have become enough for myself. For a man who once believed he was the center of your world, this realization is soul-shaking. Deep down, he knows he never did the work to become the man who could stand beside a woman like that. And now, it's too late. It's a bitter truth he has to face, one he never anticipated. There's something peculiar about memory. It doesn't just replay moments, it reinterprets them through the lens of loss. And this becomes especially true when a man sees that you've moved on peacefully, completely, and without the chaos he expected. He begins to romanticize the past. Not because it was perfect, but because now, in contrast to the emptiness of his present, even the most mundane details of your time together start to carry an emotional weight he didn't recognize before. This is the great tragedy of blindness, the inability to see the value of something until it's no longer yours to hold. We all build narratives in our heads. He had one too. Maybe he told himself that you were difficult, that you didn't understand him, that the relationship was stifling, or that he needed space to find himself. Maybe he justified his absence, his betrayals, or his emotional distance with a self-serving story. one where he was the misunderstood protagonist, and you were just a chapter in his journey towards something better. But when he sees you now, no longer waiting at the emotional doorway, something cracks in that narrative. He starts remembering the things he pushed away, the way you listened when no one else had the patience, the way you still showed up even when he didn't deserve it, the way your laughter filled the quiet spaces, making life feel bearable. And that memory becomes dangerous, not because it's just a recollection, but because it becomes a source of longing and, worse, regret. Not the kind of regret that passes quickly, but the kind that lingers, the kind that interrupts him when he's alone, when he's scrolling through his phone at night and stumbles upon a picture of you smiling with people who now get the version of you. He never took the time to appreciate the smile that's free, untainted by his dismissiveness. It's different now. It's not seeking anyone's approval. It's not dimmed by his neglect. It's free. And that freedom reminds him of what he low stand, perhaps even more haunting, what he will never get back. It doesn't matter how much he convinced himself that walking away was the right decision. When he sees you living, not just surviving, and doing it with quiet strength, that romanticization of the past kicks in. Every argument starts to look less like a problem with you and more like an inability on his part to truly appreciate you. Now that we've examined how his perception shifts, let's look at the impact of your transformation on his emotional world and what it means for your future interactions. Stay with me as we explore the deeper psychological dynamics at play. As we discussed earlier, his realization of your growth and peace is a harsh wake-up call. But what happens next? Let's delve into the emotional layers of what this transformation really means for him. Every moment where you once asked for emotional presence, something he labeled as too much, now appears in the rearview mirror as an opportunity he squandered. What once irritated him, the voice that asked him to rise, to show up as more than just a body, now echoes in his mind with a painful nostalgia. Because he realizes at last that you didn't just want love, you offered it in abundance, consistently, even when it wasn't reciprocated. And the irony? You've already processed all of this. You've lived it, mourned it, and healed from it. You've gone through the fire, and yet you found your way to stillness. But he's only now arriving at the place you were months, maybe even years ago. He's starting the journey you already finished. And that imbalance, it's crushing because he's not catching up to you. He's watching you disappear over the horizon while he's standing still, haunted by a reel of memories he can't rewind or rewrite. The pain of this realization is profound, but it's not dramatic. It's quiet. It's the kind that settles deep in your chest and doesn't leave. Because now, he sees your worth not as a concept, but as a consequence. The consequence of neglect, the consequence of arrogance, the consequence of assuming you'd always be there. But the regret he feels, it's not the deepest wound. No, there's something even more jarring that takes root when he sees how much you've grown, how far you've come. It's not just that he remembers the past, it's that your current self exposes how little he's changed. While you've done the inner work, faced the pain, and built resilience from the rubble of your shared history, he's likely still stuck in the same patterns, running from the same truths. And that realization, the one where he sees your strength shining and understands that it came from the very pain he caused this, like a wave he can't swim against. Every success you embody, every ounce of confidence, every smile that isn't shadowed by his presence, all reflects back to him like a mirror. But not a flattering mirror. No, this one shows the truth. It shows that while you turned your pain into wisdom, he remained distracted, superficial, and complacent. He didn't do the work. And now, the gap between who you are and who he is no longer bridgeable. What hurts most isn't that he lost Ute, it's that he lost access to a future with someone who was willing to fight for him, someone who believed in him even when he doubted himself. Now that you've stopped fighting for him and started fighting for yourself, he's left to contend with the reality that he no longer inspires that kind of belief in anyone else. You were the exception. What he took for granted was rare, sacred even. Now, it's gone. His only recourse? To watch from a distance, seeing you celebrated, seen, loved, maybe even by someone else. As we continue, let's explore the deeper layers of how this realization affects his emotional world and how it might shape the future of your interactions. Stay with me as we dive into the next chapter of this emotional journey. As we saw earlier, your growth isn't just a reflection of what you've overcome. It's a spotlight on his stagnation. Now, let's dive into how that realization hits him and what comes next in this emotional journey. Someone who recognized in you what he never slowed down enough to appreciate. And that's not just envy, it's grief. Grief for what was, grief for what could have been. And, most painfully, grief for the man he could have become had he just held on, had he just leaned in, had he just done the damn work. But your growth isn't just a memory of what he lost. It's a glaring reminder of his stagnation. Because every level you rise to, every new version of you that emerges, is proof that pain doesn't have to destroy, it can refine, it can elevate. While he's still stuck cycling through the same emotions, making the same mistakes, you've built something sacred from the ruins. Not out of spite, not for revenge, but because you finally realized that you were worth it. You always were. And now, he sees it too. And that might just be the most haunting truth of all. When a man realizes you've moved on, not just in words, not in performative declarations, but in the quiet, immovable calm of your daily life, he often doesn't respond right away. He waits. He watches. He calculates. And then one day, you get a message. A subtle reach, a text that says, "Hey stranger," or "I was just thinking about you." Maybe a voice note with a laugh that's meant to disarm you. It's not random. It's not harmless. It's an attempt to reinsert himself into a space he once occupied, perhaps carelessly, perhaps destructively, but with a certainty that you were always within reach. This attempt is less about rekindling love and more about reestablishing relevance. There's an instinct in people, especially in men who once held emotional control or served as the object of emotional investment, to test whether that influence still exists. The logic is simple yet deeply flawed. If I can still get access to her, then I never truly lost her. And that illusion feeds the ego. It makes him feel less like he failed and more like he simply stepped away from something unfinished. But what rattles him, what disorients him, is when that door doesn't open. When your reply isn't eager. When there is no reply at all. When the thread that once tied you to him emotionally, psychologically is gone. And this is where the psychological shift takes place. He's not only faced with your growth, but now he's forced to confront his own irrelevance. You've removed the emotional invitation. You're not angry. You're not hurt. You're just done. And that kind of detachment, that kind of boundary, it's not cold, it's clarity, it's hard won. It's deeply earned and it's immovable. In the face of that, his usual tactics fall flat. The jokes that used to disarm you now feel tone deaf. The charm that once pulled you back now seems tired. Why? Because you've evolved. You're not the same woman he left behind. You've felt the fire. You've learned what peace costs, and you're not about to sacrifice it for a few crumbs of nostalgia. Now that we've explored how your peace and growth impact his reality, let's take a closer look at what happens when he's finally forced to confront the true consequences of his actions. Stay with me as we dive deeper into the emotional aftermath of this shift. As we explored earlier, your peace and growth are a direct challenge to his own narrative. Now, let's dive deeper into how that disruption unfolds for him. And so, confusion sets in. He wonders, why isn't this working? He thought you might still be carrying a little hope, a little hurt, something he could tap into. But instead, he finds a woman who no longer needs closure, a woman who gave herself the forgiveness he never offered, a woman who no longer lives in reaction to his decisions. That realization disturbs the narrative he's carried on, where he could always come back, always have a place, always be welcomed in some way. But now, you're not welcoming chaos back in. You've rearranged your life in such a way that your emotional house is clean. Your energy isn't up for grabs anymore. And your heart? It's not a revolving door. It's a sanctuary now. One that only opens to those who earn it fully with consistency, presence, and humility. Not everyone qualifies anymore, especially not the ones who once treated your love as disposable. And that, perhaps more than anything, is what finally shatters the illusion he lived in. The belief that he could always come back, that your love was unconditional, no matter how many conditions he broke, because now he sees that your silence isn't a game, it's your freedom. And he has no map to navigate it, no tools to deconstruct it. What does a man do when the woman who once cried for him no longer thinks about him? He might get angry. He might act confused. He might try to guilt you. I thought we had something real. I still care about you. But those words are no longer currency, because you realize that care without action is manipulation, and affection without consistency is just a leash made of honey. He doesn't understand that true love requires more than just desire. It requires work, presence, and vulnerability. And those are things he either didn't know how to offer or chose not to. And now, watching you thrive, watching you glow, watching you build a life where he's not even a shadow he's left to face the truth. The absence of his presence is not just noticeable to him, it's unbearable. But it doesn't end there. Your peace isn't just personal, it's reflective. It acts like a mirror, and what he sees in it is not flattering. In fact, it's terrifying. Because while you sit in your stillness, he's spinning, still chasing, still proving, still performing. He's in the constant motion of someone who hasn't yet learned to sit with himself. And your stillness, the deep, earned kind that only comes after surviving something that could have broken you, is something he doesn't understand. What we don't understand, we fear, we resent. We feel exposed by it. Because your peace is not just Kalmut's confrontation. It confronts him with everything he never faced, every emotional shortcut he took, every opportunity to grow that he passed up in favor of ego or comfort. As we continue, let's explore how this confrontation with himself shapes his behavior moving forward and how it impacts his actions in the future. Stay with me as we dive deeper into the emotional aftermath of this shift. As we've seen earlier, your peace and growth have made a profound impact. Now, let's dive deeper into how that shift continues to unravel for him and what it means for his perception of you. Comfort or distraction. And now, seeing you at peace, not pretending, not performing, but genuinely content, realizes he's been running in circles. You got off the wheel, you've healed, you've rested, you've risen. And he's still caught in a cycle of avoidance, confusion, maybe even denial. Your peace shows him that it was never about winning or losing, it was about growing. And while he mistook your silence for surrender, it was actually transformation. It was you choosing yourself. Not because you stopped loving, but because you started loving yourself more. And now, every time he thinks about you, he doesn't see someone he can control. He sees someone he can't reach. And that distance, that space where there used to be emotion, that quiet confidence you now carry, that's the real loss. Because you didn't just walk away, you evolved. And evolution isn't something you can reverse. It's a one-way door. Once you see your own worth clearly, you can't unsee it. Once you taste peace, you refuse to settle for noise. Once you realize that you are the home you were always searching for, you stop begging others to stay. And so, he sits with that truth. No matter how clever his approach, how casual his re-entry attempt, or how familiar his presence once was, it no longer matters. Because he's not entering the same woman's life. The woman you've become has no room for people who only show up to see if the door is still open. There's a kind of reverence that only emerges when someone finally sees what you've become after they've lost you. It's not admiration in the traditional sense. It's deeper, more sobering. It's the recognition of value they couldn't grasp when they had it, and the brutal awareness that that value has now evolved beyond them. It's not just that you're stronger, it's that your strength is no longer contingent on their approval, their validation, or even their presence. That realization isn't just humbling, it's devastating to someone who once believed they were central to your world. For a long time, maybe even decades, your identity might have been wrapped in the roles you played for other's partner, caregiver, peacemaker, the one who held everything together while you were slowly coming apart, the one who gave second chances, not because they were earned, but because you believed in potential. You didn't just love him, you invested in him, you built with him, you made space for him to become more than what he was. But somewhere along the way, that emotional generosity became expected, not cherished, not reciprocated, just assumed. But then, something shifted. You reached a point where the weight of self-sacrifice no longer felt like love, it felt like abandonment. Abandonment of yourself, of your boundaries, of your voice. And so, you did the thing he never thought you would. You stepped back. As we continue, let's explore how this step back sets the stage for the final stage of transformation and how he grapples with the reality of your evolution. Stay with me as we dive deeper into the psychological effects of your emotional freedom. As we saw earlier, your peace and transformation have deeply affected him. But now, let's explore the next emotional shift he faces as you fully embrace your new self. You got quiet, not in resentment, but in reflection. You began the long, hard journey of rediscovering the woman underneath all the emotional laborthe, one who existed before the wounds, before the roles, before the need to be needed. And now he sees her. Not the version he remembers, but the one he never took the time to truly know. The one who found her worth not in what she could give, but in who she is. The one who set boundaries, not to punish, but to protect the peace she bled for. The one who no longer chases closure, but instead lives in wholeness. And that image, it shakes him because it forces him to reckon with a simple, crushing truth. You didn't become who you are because of him. You became who you are in spite of him. This creates a psychological tension that's hard to ignore. On one hand, he wants to celebrate your strength. On the other, it reminds him of everything he failed to nurture, to honor, to understand. There's a profound loneliness in that realization because he now sees that what he once dismissed as too emotional, too intense, too much was actually the language of depth, the language of truth. And now that you no longer speak it to him, now that you've redirected that energy inward, he realizes how rare it was. How sacred. But it's too late, and he knows it. What happens next is rarely acknowledged, but it's deeply human. He begins to mirror you, maybe not consciously, but instinctively. He starts dressing differently. He begins quoting books or ideas you used to talk about. He starts referencing growth, spirituality, balance, things he once scoffed at when you brought them up. He's not doing it to mock you. He's doing it because he sees that those things work. He sees how they've made you magnetic, composed, grounded. He wants that for himself. But here's the paradox. He wants the result of your journey without walking the same path. Without the nights you cried yourself to sleep. Without the therapy, the reflection, the accountability, the forgiveness not just of him, but of yourself. That's where his efforts fall apart. Because this transformation you've undergone, this radiance that now surrounds you, didn't come from performance. It came from breaking open, from examining every wound, every pattern, every lie you believed about yourself. You earned this evolution. And when he tries to mimic the result without honoring the process, it rings hollow. It doesn't land. And deep down, he knows it. But here's the most powerful part of this journey. It's no longer about him at all. That's what he feels most. Your life isn't oriented around his presence or absence anymore. You're not healing, so he'll notice. You're not glowing, so he'll regret. You're simply living fully and authentically. And that kind of self-possession, that quiet certainty, is intimidating. As we continue, let's explore how this shift affects not just him, but the dynamic between you moving forward. Stay tuned as we dive into the deeper emotional and psychological effects of your newfound strength and independence. As we've seen, your transformation has been a journey of profound self-empowerment. Now let's explore how that shift impacts not just your relationship with him, but your entire sense of self. Not because you're trying to be, but because he has no framework to engage with a woman who no longer defines herself through proximity to a man. You've become the kind of woman who walks into a room and doesn't need to say a word, because her presence already speaks volumes. You're no longer trying to be chosen, you choose. You decide who gets access to you, who earns your time, and who matches your energy. That shift from seeking to discerning is seismic. It's a profound change, one that means you're no longer operating from a place of deficit. You're not filling voids anymore. You're protecting your abundance. This shift is spiritual, it's emotional, it's psychological, and it's visible. People feel it when they talk to you. They sense the peace in your eyes, the clarity in your voice, the unapologetic joy that doesn't ask for permission. For the man who once took your light for granted, this is both awe-inspiring and unbearable, because now you're no longer accessible in the way you once were. Not just physically, but emotionally, energetically, spiritually. You've elevated beyond the frequency of dysfunction, and he's still learning how to tune into his own. There's a kind of sacred finality in that, not bitterness, not revenge, but acceptance. You've made peace, not just with what happened, but with what will never happen. And in doing so, you've closed a chapter, not by slamming doors, but with gratitude. Because even though it hurt, it also taught. It refined you. It clarified your values. It stripped away illusions, and most importantly, it gave you back to yourself. Now you move differently, you speak differently, you love differently. Your love is no longer an offering to prove your worth, it's an expression of your worth. It's discerning, it's deliberate, and it's rare. And he sees that now, but it's too late. The version of you he sees today isn't one he can return to. She wasn't built for him. She was built after him. Because sometimes the greatest gift a broken relationship can offer is the opportunity to become someone who never settles for anything less than soul-deep alignment. And that, more than any punishment, is the final consequence. He doesn't just miss you, he misses the chance to grow alongside you. And that opportunity, it's gone. So, what happens when a man sees you've moved on peacefully? He sees everything he lost and everything you gained. But more importantly, you see everything you deserve. You see your strength. You feel your clarity. And you own your peace. If this message stirred something in you, I want to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had that moment when your silence spoke volumes? When your peace became your power? Drop it in the comments below. Let's talk about it. And if this resonated, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We're building a space for real conversations, real growth, and real healing. Got a topic you want me to dive into next? Maybe something personal, something raw? Tell me in the comments. I'm listening. Because here, we're not just moving on, we're rising together.